Welcome back to the Ed Morrissey Show podcast. Joining us now, for the first time, which is kind of a surprise considering, Michael Walsh from thepipeline.org. That's the-pipeline.org. And Michael is here to talk to us about, things Irish, things American, things not going well in either places for the rule of law and liberty. Michael, welcome to the show. Great to talk to you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. You see, I put the view from my dining room in Ireland up behind me here. So that's what it looks like. So as soon as you come over to the lovely County Clare, you'll be seeing it yourself one of these days.
So I have to ask you about that. Are you near a Gaeltacht area at all, or somewhat far away from it in County Clare?
No, we're pretty close. It's just up in Galway. But where I live, which is on the extreme western edge of County Clare, looking at the Aran Islands, you see the Atlantic out the window there, and then the Arans are right there. When I first went there 50 years ago this fall, matter of fact, 50, and I reconnected the two halves of my family, there was still a lot of Irish speaking in my neighborhood. And I'm related to almost everybody in this farming area that I live in. I rebuilt my great-grandmother's birthplace.
Oh, nice.
And moved my family back and raising my grandchildren in Dublin, and they come out for the weekend. But you heard a lot of Irish, or you heard the Clare accent, which was very hard to understand. And that's gradually disappearing now. Only the old timers still have that, but close enough. Now, how's your Irish studying coming? I know you were on that for a while.
Táime stagiair Gaeilge fós ach níl mo chuid Gaeilge anwa na léinte seo.
Well, you had a go. There you go. Yeah,
good
start.
So for those who don't speak Irish, I said I'm still studying Irish. My portion of Irish, and I mean, this is one of the things I love about Irish is the word quid or quids, which is portion. And so when you're talking about collective nouns, usually, at least in older usage, you would use, quids. So, my quids. What's the word for money? I can't think of it right now, but money would be one way that you would talk about it. But you also talk about your Irish in that same way. That my Irish is a little poor, right? I love studying it. I've studied it for over 20 years. And at one point I was very conversant in it. And I actually went to Donegal, right? And went to a 1-week immersion class, and that was 5 years ago. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. It was great. I loved it. And at the time, my Irish was better, and they put me in the advanced class because my Irish was better, and it was a real challenge, but it was a lot of fun. And it's an immersion course, so all you're doing there is speaking Irish and reorienting your brain to it. Yes. I'd love to do that again. I don't know that the circumstances are really good now for me to spend that much time away. But if I did it again, I'd do 2 weeks because most of the cost is going and coming.
Well, right. Luckily for me, that's not an issue. So I think once I spend more time there, after I maybe stop writing, which will never happen, I'll just go to class. I'll go to classes in my own neighborhood. They offer them in the little villages around there. So.
Well, you're probably talking about the Connemara Connemara dialect too. I mean, which is closer to where you're at. Galway would be more of
the it's right out the window, basically.
Yeah,
those 3 islands you see belong to County Galway. Although I think Clare should declare war on Galway and take them back because we've got a better view of them than they do. So. We don't trust
the Irish need another war.
Yeah, we do. We have, at least a fight. We haven't had a fight for a long time.
Yeah, fight's good. Little fisticuffs in the streets would be okay. But
you know what they say in Irish in Ireland. You walk past and you see a group of guys pounding the tar out of each other, and you tap one of them on the shoulder and you say, "Is this a private fight, or can anybody join it?" So, that's how you know you're really Irish.
There you go. Well, I've been
anyway.
Twice.
The whole land is in trouble. So that's the thing. That's what we want to talk about, I guess.
Right. Yeah, we're going to start off with that. We'll get to some American politics as well. But I'm going to start off with this. And this is a story about how the Irish are talking about restricting speech which is to me ironic considering how their own speech was restricted by their, you know, English overlords, the Sasana,
Hmm.
or Sasani, um,
Mm.
for, you know, oh, I don't know, 800 years or so.
Yeah, well, 700.
Yeah.
How about this for a restriction? You can't speak your own language. How about that for a limitation on your freedom of speech? They
Yeah.
abolished our language, which is why we've had this introductory conversation about it. They abolished our religion. They tore our houses down. They set the churches on fire with people in them. But yeah, now we had 10 years of freedom and prosperity, and you'd I call Ireland now the slave state of the EU. We've rushed right back into the arms of really nasty people, and in this case, worse than the English, the Belgians, for Christ's sake. I tell people you fought for 700 years to free yourself from the English, and it's like the scene in Man for All Seasons. For Belgium, I mean, that's what you did.
I love
And
that scene.
oh, but the Irish people have really there's no men left in Ireland, and that's a common theme around the world. I wrote this book 2 years ago, which was luckily a nice bestseller for me, called Last Stands, which was about famous last stand battles through history. And it ended with my own father, who just turned 97 years old. Talk about the unkillable Irish, who was at the Incheon landing in Korea and at the Chosin Reservoir battle, which is one of the most famous battles in Marine Corps history now.
Right.
And what it is that makes men want to fight to the end. And now we've diminished masculinity so bad, thanks to the feminist movement, which has just been horrendous, bad for women, bad for men, bad for society, bad for Western civilization, that the men are colorless and pale and wan and low T and every other nasty thing you can think to say. And I'm surprised, because I thought the Irish would be a little bit more Irish about this, but they're rolling right over for the government of Ireland, which is effectively the World Economic Forum
Yep.
dominated. It's too complicated to go into. It's like Jews talking about Israeli politics. Two Irishmen talking about Irish politics is even more boring, if that's possible, and contentious. But we have a Taoiseach as our name of our prime minister, and they've been splitting the two clowns have been swapping the job back and forth for the past 2 years. But the main clown is Leo Varadkar, who is not even Irish. He's got an Indian father and an Irish mother, and he's very gay and very married to an American male lawyer. And he has changed the culture radically. Uh, Ireland abolished the proscription against abortion just recently. That was
Right.
in the Constitution, and they removed it. It approved gay marriage, and it's gone full tilt into the whole social wokeism. And now we're importing immigrants, in quotes, scare quotes, I should say, like there's no tomorrow. So my little village of 500 people is a seasonal place. So in the summer, there's quite a lot of people that come for the famous matchmaking festival. And, all this Irish friend came in once, looked out the window and said, there's 6 sites people come to Ireland to see, and 5 of them are right out your window, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
But we now have 900 Ukrainian able-bodied males who could easily, I don't know, go back to the Ukraine, pick up a rifle and fight, but they'd rather have everything provided for them. They get clothes, they get cell phones, they get put up in the local hotels, which is killing tourism in our town, because there's literally no place to stay if you want to come.
Right.
It's just been taken up by Ukrainians. But we've had our share of North Africans, Sub-Saharan Africans, and Afghanis. And it's changed the character. Dublin has become a very different city, dirtier, more violent. It's not good, and the Irish people don't like it. But the government, which is the WEF government, says, well, we can't do anything about it. We must take an infinite number of refugees. And we say, yeah, look, there's, it's only a place the size of Brooklyn and Queens, for crying out loud. And maybe there's several 100 million people from other cultures that would like to come. He's saying there's no limit, and they say there's no limit, no limit. So this is a big movement in Ireland right now. If you go on Twitter and start to follow some of these guys, you'll see it's tearing the country apart, and it's very sad to see. And this hate speech law is designed to keep people from talking about it. That's the main thing.
And that's really the main thing. And so I mean, this is not the only irony going on right now in Ireland either. I mean, the other irony is that the Western country that is most associated with catastrophic famine is about to slaughter 200,000 cows.
Yes. Yeah.
Because 10% of their livestock, not because they need the food, but because of climate change. And again, this gets back to the whole WEF government of Ireland. And I mean, my I'm an American because of the famine, right? My great grandfather came from Ireland. It was somewhat after the famine, but that was part of the reason, right? There was even in the 1860s, it was still difficult to get food and difficult to get, work and that sort of thing. So he came over
right up till the 1880s and 90s. It was still difficult. There was 50-year post-famine Ireland was very poor and suffered much privation.
Right. So, I mean, to me, you see the hate speech law coming into play. You see this idea that they're going to call out 10% of their livestock, well, at least their cattle livestock. I should be a little bit more specific here. Basically, to satisfy the European overlords' idea of Gaia worship, and I'm sorry, I don't see it as anything else other than that.
It is.
Astonishing for Ireland. Astonishing for Ireland. And I get that they got some pretty decent benefits from the EU, over the last generation or so, in terms of
roads. That's what we got. Roads.
Yeah. Roads. And that's okay. That's not nothing, but
no, it's not nothing. But for the roads, in other words, motorways between Dublin and Cork and Dublin and Waterford and Galway and Dublin, we've given up sovereignty. We've given up control over immigration. The cattle thing hits me big because my land is cattle grazing land, and the local farmers, I rent it out to them, so because they need a place to graze their cattle. And a cull of the herd for no reason whatsoever except the rankest kind of superstition is beyond insane. But it's where we're at now in our culture, and we see it here in America too, obviously. And everything that's going on, you just wonder, where does it end? And what I tell people is it doesn't end. It never ends. I wrote a book 5-6 years ago called The Devil's Pleasure Palace, which really outlines the philosophical basis of the Frankfurt School and how it's affected our culture. And I stand by that book. It's become a kind of Bible for people who make the cultural argument against Frankfurt School cultural Marxism. But we can't stop them. They have to be stopped. That's the point. They won't stop themselves. We can stop them, but right now we don't want to.
Yep. No, I think that's a good explanation of this. Now, I've been engaging a site called gript.ie, gript.ie, which does great in conservative politics in Ireland, which is almost not quite, but almost an oxymoron.
Right.
And Ben Scallon and Neve, oh gosh, I can't think of her last name, but the two people who are really the prime movers behind this. Now, Ben.
Yes, I do. Yes. He's a very good guy. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to turn it over to you. Ben, tell us a little bit about Grip and what you're working with them on.
He's 22, 23 years old. He's the most impressive young man of that generation I've met of that generation so far. Very smart, very articulate. It's interesting that he comes from a mixed background as well. His mother is from Jamaica, and his father's an Irishman. And I see him as a future Taoiseach. I think he's got there's no patriot like one who has to become the patriot. It's not born into it.
Right.
As you go through history, you notice so many leaders, for good and ill, weren't from the country they actually led. Stalin wasn't Russian. Hitler wasn't German. Churchill was half American. We forget his mother was from Baltimore, of all places.
Right.
The Irish patriots who rose up in the 18th century were all Protestants, not Catholics, and certainly Parnell was another case in the 19th, 20th centuries of a Protestant leading the revolution to help Catholics achieve equality before the law. So I think Ben's got a great future ahead of him, and I'm very proud to call him a friend.
Yeah, actually, I've been working with Gript or its predecessors. Neva Vrian is the woman that I initially was in contact with when she was working on she was at the Life Institute in Dublin, and she was the director. She might still be, I'm not sure, but I know that she's working with Gript at this point in time too. And if you're interested in Irish politics from a conservative point of view, I mean, Gript is a really good place to go because it's practically the only place.
Yeah, there's a reason for that too, which is the Irish electoral system is very weird. It's only used elsewhere in Malta. It's a little present the British left behind when they left for us. And it almost is constructed, it's a ranked choice, multiple round thing. So they continue to count until they get the result they want, and then they stop counting. And as a result, you have two parties, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, who were basically on opposite sides of the treaty with Britain that created the Irish Free State. It goes back to De Valera and Michael Collins and all this. Well, they're now indistinguishable. They're all socially leftist parties. And then the Greens have come in, and under this system, they couldn't get a parliamentary majority, so they had to ask a tiny party, the Greens, who got 6% of the vote in the last election. And the Greens now run all the important ministries. So we have a Green Party guy named Eamon Ryan, who's behind basically the cattle calls and more bike lanes for Dublin. There's nothing more fun than commuting to work in the Irish winter in a rain at 4 o'clock in the morning or the afternoon in pitch darkness. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Our minister for children and youth is homosexual, oddly enough, and he's a Green too. So we have a system of government that's really been seized by a minority in order to cobble together a majority. And it's very hard for third parties to really gain any traction. They have lots of them, but they're so divided that they'll never really threaten the two big parties. It's a real problem with the system of government there, but Gript, who's run by a guy named John McGurk, I think you probably have encountered him too.
Yes.
They're doing their best and trying to figure out how to work within the system in order to gain some traction for a center-right party. They put up a referendum on immigration the other day to see what the people thought, and 73% of them said stop. You'll see hashtags all over the internet. Ireland is full. 73%, and then our Taoiseach, Mr. Varadkar, said, "Oh well, that's the far right. Everybody's the far right who doesn't agree with these guys. That's the far right talking. So we're going to ignore that." So they periodically have these sorts of votes, but then if they don't agree with it, they just choose to ignore it, and they've chosen to ignore the people in Ireland. I think a center-right party would do extremely well. Fianna Fáil used to be sort of that. That was De Valera's party. But the media is entirely on the side of the government. They're relentlessly propagandistic. To tell a very sad story, as you know, I was music critic of Time magazine for 16 years, 25 years in the music criticism business. So I listened to a lot of classical music still. And the other day, when I was back in Ireland, or home as we call it, they played Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 2, which is known as the Little Russian Symphony. And I have heard this symphony many times in my life, and I'm now almost 74. And I had never heard it called the Ukrainian Symphony until the other day.
Oh, interesting.
They've changed it because Little Russia is a Russian term for the Ukraine, because that's where Russia started, after all, And but so even the music presenters have propagandized, and we're all in for Ukraine, by the way. We love Ukraine. They now call that the Ukrainian Symphony. So you get a relentless barrage of propaganda. That's all you get. It's like listening to NPR. See, I live up here in blue New England, and You can listen to any radio station you want to as long as it's NPR. So all you get is NPR, and they are fixated on climate change, which we now at the pipeline we must put every time we use it. Race stuff, of course, gay stuff, of course, and now we're 100% in on transgenderism on NPR, as far as I can tell. So you know which way the wind's blowing, because it's always blowing from one direction only. But as NPR shifts its monomaniacal focus on a few subjects, you get a new one. So right now, the new kid on the block is transgenderism.
So I'll tell you this story really quickly as an aside. It doesn't really have anything to do with politics, because I know that you love classical music. You know, I grew up when I was a kid. That was my favorite kind. I loved overtures, and I would listen to Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, all sorts of different things. So one night I had some insomnia, and I usually try to listen. I can't sleep without having something going on. I'm just one of those people, right? And I just need it to distract me enough so I can turn my brain off and go to sleep. And then it's usually on for the rest of the night, right? It just keeps me lulled. And I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I had fallen asleep actually to a television, to like a movie channel type of thing. And I wanted to get back to to just music. So I turned it on to the, classical symphony channel on my cable system. And I turn the TV back off so I can listen to it on my headphones and fall asleep again. And I hear the start of something that sounds really familiar to me. And I'm thinking, is this what I think it is? I turn the television on, and it's Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. At the very beginning of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which is not a short piece.
No, it is the reason that CDs are the length they are.
Right.
The Japanese made it so you could put all of Beethoven's Ninth, which they have fetishized beyond belief. They play it on New Year's Eve. It's on one disc. That's it. It is long, in other words. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's 70 minutes long.
Yeah, or more.
I stayed up, actually probably a little bit more than that. Yeah. So I stayed up for the whole 74 minutes, maybe is what it was, and listened to it because I love that piece. It is a spiritual journey for me to listen to that piece. Just knowing, the backstory of it, what Beethoven was struggling when he wrote it and staged it and all this kind of stuff, and how difficult it was to do that. I love this piece. It's maybe my favorite piece of classical music. So I get up the next morning and I tell my wife, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. She goes, "Oh, what was wrong?" And I told her, she goes, "What are you, an idiot? Go listen to it some other time." It's like, no. This is like when you hear Clapton come up on the radio when you're driving your car. You have to, even if you're at your destination, you have to stop and listen to all 9 minutes of Layla.
Of Layla, yeah. That is as long as Beethoven's Ninth, that's for sure.
It really is, yeah. All right. So again, the speech issue in Ireland, is very acute, right? And that's one of the reasons why it's difficult to have these debates. And they're about to make it a lot more difficult than that if they succeed with this hate speech legislation. But we're not that far behind.
We're not. I think we should emphasize this goes beyond speech. This is the way it's proposed, and there's good lawyers in Ireland. If you say anything that could upset any one of 10 protected classes, and what the hell is the government doing decreeing what protected classes are? Now we have that here too, but you can figure out what the 10 protected. If they have taken any offense at anything you've said, the guards, that's what we call cops in Ireland, the Gardaí, can actually come to your house and go through your private possessions and your computer and see if there's anything on there that could possibly be interpreted as an incitement to hate. And then you're in trouble. Now that's gone beyond anything we could possibly imagine. And it's so ridiculous that everyone says, well, surely they're not really going to do that, are they? But, with what we've learned from our own country is it can go from a Republican democracy to a fascist dictatorship in, overnight, like yesterday when they arrested the former president of the United States and the leading candidate to replace the current vegetable. for basically no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I would treat this more seriously if they had treated the same exact issues with Hillary Clinton more seriously.
Yeah, but it's different. It's okay when we do it. It's not okay when you do it. That's how all leftists think that way. You know that.
Yes,
Good Lord,
do.
I spent the years 85 to 91 in Eastern Europe and Russia. So I was there when the wall came down. In fact, I'm in my office here now, and I have some lovely pieces of the Berlin Wall that I chunked out myself. I've got some uniforms of the former Grenzpolizei. I've got all kinds of things. And I was in Russia when Chernobyl blew up, and hey, yes, sir, I'm Mr. Excitement wherever I go. And I left 2 weeks before the coup against Gorbachev. So I was in and out, in and out. I went through Checkpoint Charlie a million times. And I've seen what socialism and communism does, and I've seen what it does to people. I can tell you by the smell of the country if I'm in a socialist country or not. They have a particular odor that is indescribable. Do we really want that in the United States? And we've moved so fast in that direction. Well, once the Democrats installed their empty suit, then the hidden forces behind those guys could just go to town. And
Yep.
I've been posting on Twitter. The most dangerous man in America right now is Merrick Garland. He is the perfect apparatchik, smiling, avuncular. He's sort of like an Upper West Side intellectual, soothing voice, but he is absolutely a holy terror on our side, and he won't stop. He won't stop, and they won't stop. And that's really important to get through to our American brothers. The left cannot stop because it defines itself by critical theory, which means the destruction of everything that's between you and your fantasy of a perfect society. There is no endpoint for them. And that's what we're facing.
That is what we're facing. Well, Michael, we're probably about at the end of this here, but I want to give you some opportunities to tell people where they can find you. The-pipeline.org is certainly one of those, but on Twitter and anything else that you happen to be doing, tell us a little bit about your books so that we can get our viewers a chance to check you out more thoroughly.
Sure. Well, I'm back on Twitter now. I got kicked off Twitter before Trump got kicked off Twitter. I'm very proud of that. But I've been restored. So just look up Michael Walsh and you'll see, I'll hold it up here. My avatar is, let's see here, this book, Against the Great Reset, which was published last fall. I go by the Amanuensis. That's the name I've chosen on Twitter, but it's my name. Let's see, I've got a new book coming out next year, which is a sequel to Last Stands. It's about more battles that changed history, military stuff. What else? I'm on Facebook, so just look me up there. Michael Walsh is a pretty rare name. You go into any Irish graveyard, you see your own tomb every time you turn around. But you'll find me on Facebook and Twitter, and on the bestseller list occasionally. And also, I wrote Disney's enormous hit movie from 2002. It was called Cadet Kelly, which was the highest rated show in the history of the Disney Channel at the time, and the highest rated original movie at the time. So you can find that on Netflix and wherever else you look up movies. Good movie for kids. It's meant to be a kids movie, and it succeeded very handsomely.
Kids movie as of 2002.
Yeah, Disney
kid movies these days, not so much.
No, it's a movie about a girl who joins military school. Now they'd all be in tutus. So, but in those days, they actually wore uniforms.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, Michael Walsh, I don't know why it took us this long to do this.
I don't know.
It's my fault. And
I blame you totally, Ed. Totally. That's right. Yeah, but
just blame me. Just lay it on me. It really is.
Just to mention this, the only time we met ever was at CPAC in 2010. And that evening I had a huge heart attack and wound up in the hospital for a week in Washington. And because I had just started Breitbart's big journalism site.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
You were there with Andrew and me, and a lot of, a lot of guys have died from that original crew. But so the meeting with you, Ed, just shook me to my core. And But
Michael
now
never wants to be in the same room with me ever again in his entire life.
I'm scared. I don't go to CPAC. Too many bad memories. But let's do it again real soon. I think that'd be fun.
I'm doing a partnership with Adam Baldwin on podcasting too. So another big Hollywood.
Well, Adam published Against the Great Reset, this book.
Yeah,
and I hope that he'll be publishing our next Against book. So I can tell you that is now in the works. It'll be something that you hate and can really cheer hating it. So it'll be the second Against book, and it'll be out next year just before the election.
All right. Well, that sounds great too. All right. Well, Michael Walsh, thanks so much. It's a blast. I promise to stay at least a continent away from you for the foreseeable future. So be well and come back soon.
Thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate it.